Hey guys, welcome back. Tisha here, back with another chapter read of Breaking Free. And I have to start off by apologizing because I should have paid attention to it in the last reading that this is literally the last chapter. And I don't want to start our new book in the middle of a posting for a new chapter. So part of me is wondering if I should just go ahead and allow this to be a short video and maybe do an additional reading this week, or if I should just post this. It might only be like 20 minutes and make it up later on. I don't know. Whatever I do, because we're going to see based on how the reading goes right now. Whatever I do, I hope you all enjoy it. We are in chapter 26, Answered Prayer. And knowing that this is towards the end, I feel a little cheated because I wanted more. But maybe our next book will give us a little more. We'll see. Answered Prayers. I wasn't going back to Centennial, that was for sure. I loved my relatives there, and I was very grateful for their help, but I didn't like the way so many men there were on the lookout for more wives. It seemed so unfair to the wives they already had. Becky was moving to Salt Lake City with her husband, and I'd grown up on the outskirts in Sandy, so I thought I'd go there too. I wonder if Becky, by going with her husband, that also meant she was still leaving this belief system. Did her husband still believe in it? I wonder. Maybe she'll talk about it. Maybe she won't. Let's continue. Where was I at? I knew my brother Roy was already there. He was the oldest child of Father's third wife, Gloria Barlow. Father had never treated him very well, and he had left the church a year earlier. I didn't have a number or address for him, but I found him through Facebook. Roy told me about an organization called Holding Out Help, a nonprofit group that provides resources to the people leaving the FLDS. Everything from personal hygiene products to clothes to doctors and attorneys and housing placement. I met with Tanya T-Wall, the group's founder, and she put me in touch with an older couple who offered me 2 rooms in their house until another house could be found. If I remember correctly, we saw this young lady on an episode of Sister Wives earlier on, and she at the time was helping some young people that were leaving Warren Jeffs as well as the Kingstons. So I know based on what was shown on that episode that they have helped hundreds of people get out of these communities. The couple was very kind to us, but it was difficult staying in someone else's house with 5 children who weren't in school because we didn't know where we'd be living long term. One of the first things I did while I came up with a plan was change my older daughter's names. I had never liked the names Father had given them, and neither did they. Barbie became Ember Rose, and Martha became Majasa Gold, Majasa. I may be saying it wrong. An attorney named Roger Hu did the legal paperwork for us pro bono. We've been in Salt Lake just a few days when my cousin Aaron Wayman called and asked if we'd like to come live with him in Amarillo, Texas, where he recently moved for Phase Concrete. Aaron was now a foreman and made a good income, so he kept working there, even though in his heart he too had left the church. If you find a house before Holding Out Help does, then we will move in with you, I told him. Within a week, Aaron had found a small house in the middle of town with a brown fence around the backyard. We didn't mind that it was small since it was temporary. Aaron had plans to move to Montana when he saved up enough money in any case. I like that idea too because I love the mountains. In the meantime, he borrowed a trailer to hitch to his truck and came to get us for the drive to Texas. Aaron introduced my children to activities they'd never been allowed to do in the church. The first time he went skiing was a revelation. Majasa, brave and wild, took to the slopes like a pro. Rulon, only 7 years old, was also a quick learner and conquered the big trails in no time. Ember and I weren't so brave, and my first run down the beginning slope was a mess. This is supposed to be fun, but my third run, I started to get the hang of it and enjoy myself. The real prize for me was the joy in my heart at seeing my children having fun. Can you imagine going years without seeing your kids have fun because fun was deemed to be a sin? That's what happened in this family. For years, they've gone without being able to have physical contact with the people that they're married to, without even at some points being able to embrace their own children. And here she is in freedom, being allowed to watch what we would take for granted, which is everyday activity. It was spring by then, tornado season in that part of the country, and we did see some fierce storms and heard plenty of tornado warnings, but we never did experience a twister, which was fine by me. Several times after I left, I asked my Uncle Isaac if I could speak to Rich. He told me that Rich had chosen to obey Father, so he would not talk to me. I had to face that Rich wanted to live in the church under Father's harsh rules, but I couldn't understand how he could make no effort to find his children or speak to them or even inquire if they were okay. Girl, if that man heard that your father touched you the way that he did and assaulted you the way that he did, I'm not surprised that he's still a part of the church because he's brainwashed. This is the same man who witnessed your son be severely injured, fall from multiple stories, and tell you to pray about it. So why are you surprised that he's listening to the instructions of who he believes is the prophet? I had to face that Rich wanted to live in the church under the harsh rules, but I couldn't understand how he could make no effort for his children or speak to them or even inquire if they were okay. It was hard for the children to accept that their father cared more about the church than about them. I don't believe a reasonable man would let someone else get between him and his own family, but Rich had allowed Father, to do exactly that. We had been staying with Aaron in Amarillo a couple of months when his bosses at Phase Concrete found out he had us apostates living with him and fired him. Wow. Rather than being a bad thing, it freed us up sooner than expected, and we all moved to Pelosin, Montana in early June. We found a ranch on 20 acres of land there. The house was a cozy 3-bedroom with a loft. The only challenge was all of us having to share a single bathroom, but we managed. In August, I enrolled my children in a small country public school called Valley View. The children had an easier time adjusting there than they'd had at larger public school they attended in Sentinel. The school had only 2 classrooms, one for kindergarten through grade 3 and the others for grades 4 through 6. That's a big group of kids. That's a big gap. I've heard of this, though, in like Adventist school and some other small schools. So it's not like it can't be done. It's just a huge gap. There was a nice playground surrounded by fields of potatoes, corn, and wheat. The children loved it when they saw cowboys moving herds of cows down the road that passed in front of the school. I decided to focus on my education now too. Since I had stopped attending our church school after 8th grade, I had a lot of catching up to do, but I managed to get my GED in a month. You go, girl. Take that into perspective. She stopped learning in 8th grade, and they weren't allowed to learn subjects like history and science. And she managed to study and get her GED in a month. That shows how intelligent she is. I got my GED in a month and started to take classes in SKC College in Ronan. It was sometimes difficult helping the children with their homework and getting my own work done. But we did it. I gave violin lessons when I wasn't in school. I worried that I wasn't being a good mom when I spent my energy trying to get good grades of my own, and at times I felt overwhelmed and alone, but I was determined to provide for my kids. The church had not prepared me to work in the outside world to make a living to support my family. It didn't prepare any of the women to do that. All we could do was sew and cook and clean. The men at least had skills that were useful in trades, like construction or furniture making. The only way I was going to get a good job was to get an education. I also continued giving violin lessons for an income. Doesn't that seem, or maybe it's just me, but to me that feels like it's an additional way to keep them bound? Because how are you going to leave this faith if once you leave, you can't even support yourself? See, the guys, like she said, could do things that would get them jobs, but a lot of places aren't looking for someone who can sew and cook. And if they are, they're paying you at a lower level because some places know that you're desperate just for work. It's unfortunate. It's just another way that they keep these people bound. My brother Ray found me on Facebook not long after we got to Montana to tell me he was leaving too. I talked to Aaron about it and he agreed that Ray could come move in with us. He didn't live with us very long because he was quickly able to get a place of his own. Who can blame him with the one bathroom and all those kids? But he helped us out a lot. After the last time I saw him in Short Creek, Ray had moved in with Rich, and he had asked him about what I told him. Rich acknowledged that Father had confessed, but Rich isn't supposed to talk about that. When Father found out that Ray had asked, he sent Ray away from our family to work for FaZe, which only confirmed what I told him was true. Ray was just 21 years old when he decided to get out. I hadn't seen my husband in 4 years, but it was hard for him to let go and think. It was hard to let go and think of myself as single. I want to go back. You were told what was done to Rachel was true. And because you got upset with it, and because he asked about it, you penalize your son for wanting to know if you did what you did to his sister. You see what I'm saying about how much control this man has, and yet he keeps rebaptizing people and doing all these other things, and nothing is happening to him. I hadn't seen my husband in 4 years, but it was hard to let him go and think of myself as single. I was 31 years old, and I had no idea how to date. It was a scary prospect. With 5 children, too, it seemed nearly impossible. Interesting thing is she's calling him her husband, but I don't even think that the law would recognize them as having a marriage. She didn't have a marriage certificate. The marriage was done by her father, who says that he was even ordained or had the licensing that he needed to marry anyone, let alone additional wives. When we were still in Salt Lake, I guess word got out that Warren Jeff's daughter was available, and men did contact me asking to go out with me. I turned them all down. Some of the older men already had wives, and the younger men, who had no families, were no match for a woman with 5 kids. Perhaps I was too picky, but I had enough on my plate as it was. I still felt that way when we moved to Montana, not far from another FLDS outpost just across the border in Canada, which meant there were other former church members in that area. A man in Canada who had left the church a few years earlier reached out and asked if I would let him court me, but he already had 2 wives, so I politely told him I wasn't going to live in polygamy again. Would you be willing to talk to my brother, the man said. He doesn't believe in polygamy either. I agreed to talk to this man's brother, but fully expected nothing to come of it. That brother was Brandon. He and I started talking casually at first. Brandon was a little less than a year older than me and had been married in the church also, but he had left in 2012. His ex-wife, whom Father had chosen for him, was still in the church, and she and Brandon shared custody of their 4 children. Brandon and I met for the first time a few weeks later, near the end of October 2015. We decided to meet in the Walmart parking lot in Kalispell. Then he would drive his truck to Glacier National Park. I got there first and waited, my nerves growing more jangly with each passing minute that he was late. He finally pulled up next to me and rolled down his window. "Hi," Brandon said. He was wearing sunglasses, so I couldn't tell what his eyes looked like, but I didn't dare ask him to remove them. He quickly explained that he did not have a GPS in his truck, so it had taken him a little while to find the place since he'd never been there before. On the way to the park, we talked and got to know each other. Brandon seemed very genuine, and I found it easy to confide in him. We went to dinner at Applebee's that evening. As we sat down at our table, he finally took off his shades, and I was struck by how handsome he was. You mean to tell me he had on his shades the entire time? Sir, at some point, I would hope that you would take your shades off just a little bit so I can see your eyes so we can make eye contact. But okay, it's not my date. I'll be quiet. But it was how I was struck by how handsome he was. That's what I read. But it was how kind and caring he was that really got to me. I think we were both too nervous to eat much. Brandon had to get back for work, so he took me back to my car after dinner before heading back to Canada. I so wanted him to hug me, but I don't think either of us dared. This was new territory for us both. It was new and exciting to spend time with someone because I chose to. Our second date, we met in Bonners Ferry. That time we hugged. Together we planned a trip to Southern California at the end of the year. We had a friend, Marty, who had left the FLDS and became a Navy SEAL. He was stationed in San Diego and had invited us to stay with him. You go, boy. I love that these people are leaving and they're making something of themselves because their faith says that they're, going to damnation based on leaving. So the fact that these people are leaving and they're doing well speaks volumes. My brother Ray and sister Angela came too. The four of us arrived in the evening, and we all stayed up late talking and laughing with Marty, and his wife until we cried. Y'all, I'm so sorry I keep yawning. I don't know what's up with me. The next morning, we visited Fort Rosecrans National Cemetery. Rosecrans, Rosecrans. I had never seen anything like it. The rows and rows of identical stones commemorating fallen members of the military set against a panoramic view of the bay. I was filled with a sense of revelation and peace. Later that day, we put on our swimsuits, and Marty took us to the Coronado Beach where the SEALs train. We spent the afternoon in the ocean, my first visit since that brief experience in Galveston when I visited Father in prison. The salty sweetness of the ocean made me incredibly happy, and I wanted to soak up every moment of it. I walked all the way out until the water came up to my shoulders, diving under the waves as they came toward me. Brandon worried I was too far out and asked me to come back, but I stayed right where I was. I was fine. As the sun was sinking toward the western horizon, Brandon said, "We need to get a sunset picture up on the tower at the obstacle course." So Marty and his wife, Angela and Ray, and Brandon and I jumped into Marty's ride and drove over to the course where the SEALs trained. Brandon and Marty lifted me up onto the tower, which they called the High Slide for Life, and Brandon climbed up after me, followed by Marty to take our picture. I could see a storm brewing in the distance, which made the sunset even more spectacular, the waves crashing along the shore below. I was mesmerized by the view. Suddenly, Brandon dropped to one knee in front of me. "Rachel, will you marry me?" What? Okay. I gotta understand that they're both from the same faith, so they do things differently. This man knew after a couple of dates that he wanted to marry this woman. And here he is, and he's dropping down. I'm not mad at it. I was stunned. No one had ever proposed to me before. That's right, because her father just told her who she was going to marry. They didn't even know each other at the time. And here she is, falling for someone and he proposes. Okay. This was also new for me. I didn't know what I was doing or how to respond. I said yes. Brandon placed a ring on my finger and stood up so Marty could take our picture. He teased us and made us laugh. They lowered me down on the beach where Marty performed a mock wedding for us. Do you, brother Brandon, take Sister Rachel by the right hand and marry her to yourself, he said. Brandon laughed and said yes. Dear Sister Rachel, do you take this dear brother Brandon by the right hand and give yourself to him? I was laughing too. Yup, I said. Then, dear brother Brandon, you may kiss her. Brandon put his strong arms around me, and we kissed there with the sand between our toes, the waves of the ocean lapping at the shore, and a lovely sunset behind us. It was a day I marked as very happy in my life. It was wonderful to choose a man, to fall in love naturally instead of having my life arranged by father. I felt so free and so full of love, I could hardly place my happiness. I moved into my own house with my kids in January 2016. It was an older house, but big, with 5 bedrooms, a large living space downstairs, and lots of windows that let light in. It felt good to be on my own finally, although it was difficult making ends meet. Oftentimes, I wondered if I'd be able to manage, but somehow things worked out, and Brandon helped us a lot. Then my landlord got engaged and decided he needed my house for himself. He gave me less than a month's notice to find a new place. What is it about the people in her vicinity that just up and decide that she has to go? Here she is, she's free, and she's being told that this nice home that she made now has to be uprooted. I didn't have a credit history or a regular job, so it was hard to find a house we could afford. Brandon helped me look from Salt Lake City up to the Canadian border, but nothing looked promising. I cried and prayed a lot during the month of May as June deadline approached. We both applied for a number of places, but never heard back from the real estate agents. Then, just 9 days before we were going to be evicted and I was running out of hope, a man called from Idaho. I don't care about credit or anything like that. Just give me your landlord's number, and if he gives a good payment history, you can rent my home. The relief I felt was indescribable. We moved to Idaho a few days later. After all this time, it seemed my prayers had finally been answered. Epilogue. Life never ends up the way I think it's going to. It surprises me in so many ways every day, some good, some bad. Being grateful for whatever life hands me is the key to my sanity and happiness. I will always be grateful for my time with Rich. He made me feel like a good person. He made me feel loved and showed me that all men are not like my father. Because of him, I learned to compose music, make cheese, make cows, and drive a tractor. Rich made me laugh, shared beautiful sunsets with me, and gave me 5 precious gifts in my children. I wish I had told him how I really felt the last time I saw him, that I had disobeyed the rules and hugged and kissed him and hold him and tell him I love him. I have to remind myself often that it wouldn't have changed anything. He isn't here now. He doesn't help take care of his children, and I don't feel the same way toward him now. It has not been easy adjusting to life in the outside world. Learning to navigate a whole new way of living and supporting 5 children as a single mother has been a struggle, but having our freedom is worth it. I love that we can go play dodgeball on the trampoline or lie out under the stars and tell scary stories. In the summer, we swim, pick huckleberries, and go hiking. In the winter, we go tubing down our hills, ice skating at the park, or jump off the roof of the garage into the enormous piles of snow that comes down here. Come on, Mom, come dance with us. That's what my kids say to me almost every evening now, as one of them takes me by the arm and leads me into the living room. I'll run the music, Majasa says. She's a pro at finding the best tunes for us to jam out to. The girls, young teenagers now, do one-handed cartwheels, and try to teach me the latest dance steps moves from jazz to hip hop to ballet. We love it all. I wonder if that J is silent in her name. The boys have their own tricks to show off. Rulon flies around the room doing flips and cartwheels and twirls on his head, and his little brother tries to copy his moves. 7-year-old Nathaniel is determined to teach me how to do a cartwheel. It takes a lot of tries before you can do it good, he tells me. I try to do one for his sake, but I can't seem to get my legs up in the air. It's okay, Mom. You're good at lots of other things. I laugh, and we keep boogieing, tumbling, and laughing our faces off. Our evening dance time is silly and joyful, and by far our favorite part of the day. I believe God loves to see us enjoy life with our families. I still have bad dreams about Father. In some of these dreams, Father insists that I have sex with him every night, and there is nowhere for me to escape. During the day, I gather my little sisters to protect them from him. I tell my sisters to make sure to lock their doors at night. As night falls, I am overwhelmed with dread of what I know is to come. In some of these dreams, Father grips my wrist tightly and explains to me why God wants me to have a baby with him. Goodness gracious. He won't let go until I promise to have a baby with him. In some of these dreams, I hear Father telling my little sisters why God wants them to have sex with him. I step in and tell him to do it to me instead, since he has already hurt me. I don't want them to suffer as I have. I hate how these dreams still plague me. I hope with all my heart and soul that someday they will go away, but I know that I am fortunate because they are just dreams. For many of his family, the nightmare is still too real. I hope she has gone under therapy, and I hope she continues to go to therapy. Those dreams will never leave her, but I am a believer, based on certain things that I've been through, that with work, you can lessen the frequency of them. In late August 2016, Father sent letters from prison in which he said that his family was unworthy of him and that God would give him a new family. He sent 7 of his most special wives away forever with instructions that they must leave their children behind. And the sad thing is that they probably did it because they do whatever he says. This edict, like so many others that have come from behind those prison walls, hurts my heart. Father has trained his family, especially his women, in such a way that they cannot survive outside the church. Father's 12-year-old bride, Alicia, now 24, who was living with us and hiding in Idaho, recently escaped with the man she always loved. She came to visit me and asked to hear my story. After I finished telling her, she said, "Rachel, why didn't you tell us sooner so we didn't have to waste all those years there?" Oh, wow. Rachel, it's not your fault. I hope Rachel knows it's not her fault. I smiled and said, "You wouldn't have believed me." "You're right," she said. "Sometimes we have to go through hell ourselves before we are humble enough to listen." She then told me that Father sent a message to all of his family after his daughters, had left the church, saying the reason we left is because we were guilty of masturbating and would not confess to him. I can just imagine the image my brothers and sisters have of me. My question is, why can't you just say that they left? Why do you have to lie and add more to it? Because they're already suffering. They already struggle to leave in the first place. And here you are, and you're going to add on to it and say, well, they left because they were guilty of masturbating and they didn't listen to me. No, they left because they were tired of your crap. And they finally saw you for who you really are. We are all taught that leaving the church is the greatest sin and that anyone who does it is wicked. A number of people who left the church before me reached out to hear my story. After I repeated it several times, I started to write it down. My father's wives are lost without the church, but they will not speak to me because they still believe that I am wicked. I hope they will come to believe that what they've been taught is a lie, that the world is not a wicked place, and that they are worthy of God's love. To all my family still in the church or cast out but afraid to reach out, you always have a home at my house. Until then, I pray. That is how she ends it. Ooh wee. I want more, and I feel like she didn't do another book. Correct me down below if I'm wrong. I told you I will come back to a set of pictures because I didn't want to give away a part of the story by showing those pictures. This is her and Brandon, the one that proposed to her. That's her and Brandon. She's a pretty girl. She's really pretty. And then these are herself and her kids in 2017. Beautiful kids. Beautiful, beautiful kids. That one standing beside her with her hair down looks a lot like her. That's crazy. Okay, let me see if there's anything else in the back of this book because that was the end of that. I'm not going to name all of these names, but there is a family tree of Warren Jeffs, 78 wives and 53 children. It's a lot, right? A lot. I'll put it to you this way. Oh, wrong page. For those of you who are watching, that's a page of names. Another page of names and another page of names. A lot of names. A lot of names. Acknowledgements. I want to give special thanks to the following people. My sister Angela and Becky and my brother Ray for always being there for me no matter what Father said. My grandpa Isaac's family for giving us a place to live when we left. My cousin Aaron Wayman and brother-in-law Danny Allred for helping support us when we first left. Brandon for your love and support. Tawani Browning for helping me in so many ways. Rose Dustin and Annie Blackmore for being my friends. At HarperCollins, my editor Luke Dempsey and publisher Jonathan Burnham. My agent Heather Jackson and David Black Literary Agency Elizabeth Stein for helping me write the book. I was not present at my father's trials or the raid at the land of the refuge in Texas, so I relied in part of my reporting in the New York Times, the discreet news, and especially the excellent in-depth reporting by Katie Vine in the Texas Monthly for some dates and facts about those events. Additionally, I also referred to my sister Teresa's book, 2008 Raid. Upon learning of its publication, Father promptly sent her a strong correction, telling her that Heavenly Father was displeased with her for making her story public and for instructed her to burn all 10 copies she made. At her request, I burned the copy she had given me. However, she also asked me to keep an electric copy, from which I am very grateful. So what was the point of burning them if you had an electric copy? And now you done told everybody that you got an electric copy. I wonder if people from her community will have access to this book. Probably not. About the author, Rachel Jeffs grew up in the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, a polygamous Mormon sect, which she escaped in 2015. Rachel and her 5 children live in Idaho. And that is the end. I am sorry this is so short, you guys. I should have worked that out better, but I was so into what we were reading last time that I just kept going. Sorry that this is short. But for those of you who are still here, I will let you know what the next book is. It was requested in the comment section by more than one person. It was suggested, so I went ahead and I ordered it. And it is by someone who is a part of Rachel's family. And it's going to be interesting to see the other side of this. Trapped in a cult, I had to get them out or die trying. Give Me Back My Children by Sarah C. Allred. This is one of the other wives, you guys. This is one of the other wives. And I guess since we're here, I'm not going to read the book. Oh, this writing is kind of big. I'm not going to read the book. What I'm going to do is I am going to read the back page so we can get a little idea. Because I haven't read any of this. All I did was take it out the box. She only wanted to be a mother to her own children. FLD leader had other plans. At the age of 18, her arranged marriage to Rich Allred, nephew and bodyguard to the prophet, put Sarah close to the hierarchy. As cult leader Warren Jeffs took full power, his brutal experimenting increased. Sarah's children were continually used to force her into unconditional submission. In 2012, her children taken from her. She must fight to find them. Sarah, strained beyond her breaking point, only wanted to be a mother, but can a mother's love be enough? Ooh-wee. We're gonna see. So this is our next book. This is Sarah. I have not even made a cover or anything for this as of yet because, as I said, I just opened the package right before getting up here. It's going to be interesting to see things from her perspective, to hear what she may have went through. And we're going to get at this on Friday. So we'll see what she has to say. Until next time. Oh, not until next time. Let me know what you thought of this book, because we're going to start doing this at the end of every book. If you had to rate this, and even for those of you who normally just watch and you don't comment or you don't like, write something so I have an idea of, how you're feeling here. Rate this book from 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest score you could possibly give it, and 5 being the highest. I'll put my rating in the comment section eventually. I don't want anybody's thoughts to change based on my own. I'll tell you this much. My comment for my number is going to be at least a 4. I'm not giving it a 5 because I feel like we just got to a spot in the book and I wanted more. Like, when did you and Brandon, are you and Brandon married? Have y'all had any kids together? Like, where are we now? I feel like we just, once again, just like what happened in the other book, we get to this point where she's finally escaped and we want to see what being out completely looks like. And then you don't tell us. So now I got to give you I'm going to give you a 4. Okay, I'm telling y'all my score. I'm giving you a 4.0. I was going to do like a 4.3, but no, I'm getting mad thinking about it. I'm getting mad thinking about the unknown. So I'm going to give you a 4.3. I think that this book was a very good read. I appreciated her transparency. She told us things that aren't always easy to tell, knowing that once you put it out there, you can't take it back. She still protected some people, but she gave us enough to get a peek into her world. And that takes a lot of courage. Thank you so much for joining me for those reads. Some of you have been here since the beginning. Some of you jumped in towards the end. No matter when you came, I appreciate you. Until next time.